a maimer, a miyehudi, a shleimus haaretz, the kviyas of the Shabbos, it really brings you into a higher world view of perspective on the world. And then it's always, the Rebbe would, whenever you walk into a farbrengen, I walk in like on an empty tank. I'm empty, I'm thirsty. I want to be filled. I want to be enlightened. I want to be inspired. When you get to the end of the farbrengen, the Rebbe himself made it this way, that the end of the farbrengen was always a climax. At the end of the farbrengen, in the old day, by the big farbrengens, he would sing Tzomah L'cha Nafshi, or usually at the end of the farbrengen, the Sheibana Beis HaMikdash, or the Nyet Yekavo, of when everyone's minds and hearts were open. And by then, the Rebbe, stood you up, and with that, you walked away. And when you walked out, whenever you walk away from the Rebbe's of farbrengen, you walk out looking milamayla lamata on the world. You look at the world and it's all small, it's all down there, and you have clarity, you have ambition, you have a goal.
When you're at a good teichendike farbrengen and you wish it was being recorded? Welcome to Spreading the Springs, Conversations in Chassidus, a podcast farbrengen where we have real conversations about real Chassidus. Welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm sitting here with Rabbi Follie Dubov, an esteemed Mashpia in Oholei Torah Mesivta. And in the past 2 years, I've worked in Oholei Torah Mesivta as well, so I got to know you a little bit. And definitely all-around Geshmaka guy, if I could say so on your behalf. And you definitely, I'll start with this. There's a certain, we'll go back, we'll start from the beginning of your story, and we'll go forward, and we'll farbrengen, and we'll talk, and we'll
go for it,
and we'll converse. But one thing that I just want to start with that really struck me about you, and I've heard this from so many people that know you and that have been in your classes, that you talk about a Rebbe's farbrengen as if you were there. Mamish as if we were there. So besides for the teichen of the actual farbrengen, which is obviously the ikar, the living and reliving the message of the farbrengen, even the arum, it's almost like you could say exactly who was sitting where, and if they were there, weren't there, if they turned around in the middle of the sechach, it's like mamish as if you were there live. And obviously it comes from a tremendous amount of learning and koching and really living in it. And for sure, in the context of this podcast, of the relevance and the life of Chassidus, where we're not just learning Chassidus, we're trying to live it. I think that itself shows on a tremendous chush that you have, Baruch Hashem, that you give over to your Talmidim. Your Talmidim know this about you, so that means that you give it over to them. So yeah, I think that's definitely almost like as if you need credentials in the beginning. I think that's something that stands out and something that's very special. And yeah, maybe we'll talk about that, going forward. But let's back up now. Let's go back to the beginning. You're from England,
London, England.
And okay, so where did you grow up? Where did you go to yeshivas? What's your seder? I've heard that kind of Eser Golius before you ended up in Oholei Torah. So can you take us briefly through that journey?
In brief, I was born in Crown Heights.
Oh.
My parents were here and in Kailul, and my father went on shlichus when I was an infant, and I grew up. I was raised in Wimbledon, which is known for the tennis, in London, England. I was raised on shlichus. In order for my chinuch, I had to commute over an hour every day there and back.
Wow.
To Stamford Hill, to the Lubavitch boys' schools in London. And I went through the junior school, the elementary, and the mechina, in London. And then I learned in France, in Brunois for 2 years. And then in Oholei Torah Zal, that was the best years, Oholei Torah Zal, for 2 years. And then I was a Talmud shliach in Tenas Emes in Yerushalayim. And then I was back in 770 for 2.5 years.
Okay.
So that's my story.
As a Talmud.
As a Talmud. And then in my Shana Rishena, I got a job in Manchester Yeshiva in England, with Rabbi Akiva Cohen, Rabbi Wolberg Zangesund.
That's Zal, right?
In Zal, and I worked there for 7 years. I was like a junior Mashpia. I was like getting involved a little bit more close with the Bachrim. That's where I did my training, and there's some good memories, good years, good paydas from that. Whatever the case is, whatever the story was, but the yeshiva in Manchester closed, and I ended up in Moscow. Okay, Rabbi Beryl Lazar has a yeshiva. There's a yeshiva for Balchuvas. There's a yeshiva for Anash and Shluchim's children, and then he made a introductory, like a Mesivta, for Balchuva children, Russian kids that needed transition into the system, so to say. And I ran that for 2 years until COVID. And that's when I came back to Crown Heights. The place closed down. And I'm in Oholei Torah for the last 5 years.
Wow. When you were in Oholei Torah Zal, you mentioned that those were your best years. So which, in terms of Chassidus, in terms of Mashpia, who built you up?
Who built us up? I mean, they're gesund, they're alive.
Yeah.
Talk about them, but it's Oholei Torah is very special. It was something that I believe Oholei Torah. I mean, today it's a little, time has moved on a little since the 20 years ago that I was there, but. What was special for me about the staff of Oholei Torah was the closeness to the Rebbe. In other words, you can go to Eretz Yisrael and you have Mashpia that could teach you Chassidus, and you can have Rosh Hashivas that could teach you Nigla, and there's different characters and people. The almost like the transparency, the closeness, the staff in Oholei Torah, Rabbi Nachman Shapiro, Shalom Charatanov, Rabbi Pinya Korf, Rabbi Yisrael Friedman, Rabbi Shalom, Rabbi Vrumi Galitzki Zangesund. I mean, these Yidden, which I heard of it on. When I was at Bachar and Zal, I had a policy. I would not be makabel from any younger like from the young guys from after Gimel Tammuz. Like, that was not why I was in Oholei Torah. I wanted to get close to the Rebbe, and I wanted to have the experience. And by rubbing off from these people, I got a lot of the Rebbe's Torah, Chassidim of the Rebbe, Chassidim by the Rebbe.
Right.
A lot of what you mentioned before.
Right. Is that when you started having this chush in learning the Rebbe's Farbrengens, or was it something before?
I always, we always had the fire burning of Hiskashrus from my youth, especially that my youth was the tkufa of Nun Beis and Gimel Tammuz and the aftermath. And in London, I mean, the role models for Hiskashrus after Gimel Tammuz, Rabbi Gordon Zangesund, Rabbi Telsner, who really blew into my father, who really gave us the Rebbe when after Gimel Tammuz, and gave us a Hiskashrus. Rebbe Paris, Olav Hasholem, Levi Paris was my melamed when I was in, for 15 or 6, whatever it was, and they really gave us a Hiskashrus, a feeling and a sense of identifying with Lubavitch and the Rebbe and Shlichus and etc. And that's what, but that was in an infant way. I guess and in Zal Oholei Torah it was more, the party, the celebrative aspect. I mean, I think what really stood me on my feet and what gave me the solid Torah Hiskashrus that I have to the Rebbe was Rabbi Yael Karnal Bashalom, the Rebbe's Chaser, and the Mashpia in 770, which even when I was in Oholei Torah, I valgured by him. I spent a lot of time with him, and when I was in 770, I really was makabel from him. I mean, I would arrange his shiurim Monday and Thursday mornings. I brought him his tea. I spent every Friday night for 4 or 5 years in his house with the Israeli Bachrim, and him pumping into them Darkei Chassidus stories, the Rebbe's Torah, Hashkafa, And
You're
I was
related
actually
also,
close
no?
to him.
You're related.
I'm related because I'm the first name after his father. So although Rabbi Yale wasn't, as if to say, a family person, he was, an abstract mind, a muscular, a chochem, and in that way. But he had a very warm spot for me, and that personal connection. Also with his wife, that I still have a connection with, and I've named a child of mine Yael after him. He was really, I would have Hiskashrus, but it would be more fluff and dancing on the tables and mitzvah tanks. To say that the Rebbe's Torah, he thoroughly taught us Melukot, and the earlier Krochim, fundamental Sichas and Lakota Sichas, the Rebbe's Mukadik and Maamarim, and really drilled in addition to the Chassidus warmth, Nigunim stories that he was a master, but the Rebbe's Torah, not just did he teach it to me, but in my personal life, I have a sense of that Rabbi Yale is a bit of a role model. I mean, I didn't know Rebbe. We only heard about Rebbe in his heyday, in his younger years, when he was when it was in the earlier days when he was more wild and more how I had to say not necessarily with that responsibility, but after Gimel Tammuz, of course, he crashed. I mean, I didn't see him right after the original years. There was lots of pain and politics and whatever. But in the Samachs, that's the 2000s. In those years, he basically reconstructed himself. I think he realized that he wanted to take responsibility for transmitting and giving over the Rebbe's Torah to the world. He was a role model. He was an old man. In his 80s, he would fly to Eretz Yisrael, speak in Binyanei Ummah. He went to Borough Park, like I thought, every Thursday night, Mitzvah Shabbos. His commitment, his dedication to be Meifitz the Mayonis. I heard him say, a Moshel and Chassidus, Rika 7 Milamata Lamaila, that the Eberster creates the world. I heard him say that dozens and dozens and dozens of times. And he said it with the same patience and the same chayas and the same... with the genuine vibe, the vibrance of Chassidus. He could say it a trillion times, again and again, to any Talmud that he could reach, especially in the Frumma world and the Bachram 770, that valued and understood the weight and the quality of the Rebbe's firsthand. The one that was responsible for giving over and the Rebbe's Torah on writing and published and to the world. So it was very, not just did I gain from that in knowledge, but I got from that role model and marching orders for my own personal life of how to be dedicated, to be Meifitz the Mayonis, to make Mashiach come.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay, I'm glad I asked about that because now we heard about the Rebbe part of it. Yeah. Right. So now going forward, and you're in Mesivta, and Mesivta is a little bit. You're Mashpia in Mesivta. Mesivta is a little bit younger. Mesivta is, like you said before, like the infancy of Hiskashrus. This is not as I say always, it's not a chinuch podcast. It's not about how to be a mashpia in yeshiva. But I think just to dwell on this point as it relates to Hiskashrus and as it relates to guiding in Hiskashrus, and whether it's guiding other bachrim, whether it's guiding yourself. What from that? How do you translate that into for a younger bacher? Because some of it takes maturity. Some of it, takes pashat understanding what the Rebbe wants and learning the mimer, but not just learning the mimer itself, understanding the message of the mimer, the like you said, the marching orders of the mimer. How does a young bacher get that? Meaning, Meaning, like, how much is it of, or let's say going back to the farbrengen, you said before, I mentioned before, learning the Rebbe's farbrengen, right? So there's learning the actual farbrengen and seeing, the question on the Rashi and the pre-Yud and the Parsha, etc., and then the answer, and then the, connection to Shleimus Haaretz or whatever it is, and then there's like the life behind it. So how do you give over that life? That's I think the point of this. It's not just a message. It's not just you. So, and again, same thing when you're teaching a mimer. You're teaching the mimer, and especially when a bacher is younger and he's more like focused, tunnel vision a little bit, like and what's this mimer saying, and what's the question, what's the answer, what's the chiddush of the mimer? How do you give over that life? How do you give over that geschmack? I think especially to younger bacher, but really to yourself, meaning to anyone, to themselves.
Let me, in other words, if we said like this, the maturer understanding of the Rebbe's Torah definitely comes with time.
Right.
The Maimer Chazal koim in acher arbanim shnim koim adaite de Rabbi. This is actually a theme the Rebbe developed many a time. Yud Bistamas Chav Zayin 40 years from Yud, but primarily, let's say Yud Shvat Tov Nun, coming Yud Shvat Tov Nun. When it was 40 years of the Rebbe's leadership, the theme. Obviously, the psukim about Moshe Rabbeinu, Leinosan, Leiv Ladas, and Naim Lereis, and Naim Lishmoya, that Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Yidden at the end of 40 years that you have now a much more of a mature understanding and a bird's eye view and a deeper scope of what you've been taught. The mashal in Chassidus for the Arboim Shnim is the classic mashal. It's in Oholei Torah Mesivta about the Rav and the Talmud. And the Talmud the Rav is a obligvol genius, and the Talmud is simple and primitive. And the Rav has to encapsulate everything into a little seed of information, a summary, which is transmitted to the Talmud, and then the Talmud, the student, goes and further develops it. And I feel that the same thing is in one's approach to education. When I'm teaching a 15-year-old Chassidus, yes, he may not yet have reached the mature, thorough, comprehensive understanding of how vast and enormously awesome the Rebbe's Torah is. But what you are giving in that encapsulated way and in that seed way is you're giving the full-blown energy of what was given. Mm-hmm. How do you do that? And the answer is it's the energy. I think it's the arum that it's given over with. In other words, when the bacher is sitting in the class, I'm not just teaching him a question and an answer and a beer. This is Chassidus. This is the Mayonet. Now, when do you give that? This is the Rebbe. You give over the energy as well. Now, when do you highlight that energy? That's a lot the between the lines. That's the conversations that we have in class, and that's also farbrengens. Right. Primarily farbrengens, of where you speak about why we do what we're doing and what is the value of what we're learning. What is the difference of what we're learning than any other chachma study in the world? And I find that I teach different levels, different grades, different crowds as well. I teach in Beis Rivka as well, and in seminary, and I teach in Oholei Torah, and I teach also in high school. There's different levels of how you have to give it over. The content. But Hatzad HaShaveh, what the common denominator is, that what has to be given over is that this is Divrei Elokim Chayim. Lebedike Getliche Werter. This is Anoichi Mitzavcha Hayoim. Not Kidyutkama Yeshana, like Rashi says. Yiddishkeit isn't an ancient, old story, like the Rebbe says in Lekut Sichos and Elia Kracham, an old story. Teira's Chayim, Teira Hira, it's a lesson, it's contemporary, it's relevant. Perek Mem Zayin Tanya, B'chol Devader is a nice Mishnah. The Rebbe in the Torah Psukim, B'chol Devader, that Yitzias Mitzrayim is a pillar in Yiddishkeit. The Alter Rebbe adds the V'chol Yom V'yom, Kilo Yotza Hayom in Mitzrayim. It's the relevance, it's the contemporariness that Yiddishkeit, Teire, Chassidus, Emune, Eibeshter, Chassidishkeit, Darkei Chassidus is all alive, is all relevant, is all applicable, and is all reachable, the Kikorev, for every single student on one level of intellect or another. But everyone's shaykh to be a chassid. And a lot of what I have to do is role model that, which means not just teach that, but you have to, what the impression that's given over, what leaves an impression on the Talmud or the Talmidah is that this is not a story from a book. You know, I'm not telling a Baal Shem Tov story from 300 years ago. Yiddishkeit is alive, and it's for me, and I could be a chassid, and that's.
So it sounds something very interesting that I got from what you're saying is that as much as it's our job to make the Chassidus relevant, obviously Torah and Yiddishkeit in general, and specifically Chassidus relevant for the Talmud, we also need to point out that that's exactly what Chassidus is doing in the first place. That Chassidus is making Torah and Yiddishkeit relevant for us. So in other words, the job that we have, the importance that we have, and this is a big theme in this podcast about the relevance of Chassidus. In other words, the word Chassidus itself is already supposed to give over the relevance of Hashem and the relevance of Torah mitzvahs and Yiddishkeit. So now that itself, in other words, you're inherently working with something that's supposed to be relevant, and now making it relevant, which of course, differs, like you said, it differs from crowd to crowd and age and stage and all that, but you're dealing with something that's supposed to be relevant. And I think that's actually a very important introductory thing, which means that, a question that comes up a lot is, of course, is like, how is all of Chassidus relevant? Especially if it's like, deeper stuff and Chakira stuff, the Chakira within Chassidus. And what you're saying is that, number one, the Hakdama, the Yesoid is that is what Chassidus is. Chassidus is meant to be relevant. If Chassidus is going to take you on a trip deep into Seder Shtalshalos and all the way up there, fine. We have to figure out one way or another how it's relevant, and I'd love to hear from you if you want to put in on that specific topic, how you could take even deep Askala and show its relevance. But the Yesoid is that's what all of Chassidus is. Like you said before about Bechol Davar V'chol Yom V'Yom. The Rebbe is putting that into words of the Mishnah, which is a very bold move, because that is what Chassidus is going to come to do. Chassidus should be doing that in every pasuk and in every Mishnah, exactly, showing how it's Bechol Yom V'Yom. So in other words, we're not being doichek. A Mashpia is not being doichek when he's coming to show you the relevance of Chassidus. The relevance of Chassidus means the relevance of relevance. Like that's what I'm picking up on what you're saying. Do you want to share a little bit about this nakuda, about what do you do when you're teaching Deep Haskalah? How does, so again, number one, maybe more of a general makiftika avir of how it's relevant, and then maybe also, if you want to, like a specific topic or a specific way how to bring out relevance of the depth of Chassidus.
So to answer that question, let me just first say, there is my own learning Chassidus, and then there is my teaching job. Now, what I'm doing in my teaching job is I'm teaching Tanya, and Tanya is the relevant book.
Right.
I'm teaching, so for example, I'm learning in Tanya, let's say, I was just the other week learning Tanya Perek Mem Vov, and it speaks about the mashal of the melech that comes down to the simpleton and schleps him out of the dumps and embraces him. And I remember at the end of the class, I banged on the table. I said, do you realize that this is supposed to give us a chayas in keeping mitzvahs? And everyone got it. In other words, there is direct relevance.
Right.
I teach a Nun Aleph and Nun Beis class in seminary, right? On Fridays, Baruch Hashem, it's a tzlachadik class of where we go over, the Parshal, Chassidus, and Mashiach. And a lot of it is so relevant because although it's high Asius and high Chassidus vocabulary, but it's all about, a central theme, Chibur al Yenim v'Tachteinim, bringing heaven and earth together, bringing Ruchnis and Gashmis together, bringing the Eberstein into the world. These things are high power points in what Chassidus is all about and what the Tachlis HaKavanah is all about. So there's a lot of practicality. Another class I do in seminary is a farbrengen class. It's a whole different, in other words, not that I farbreng. I give over a farbrengen of the Rebbe. I chazer a farbrengen of the Rebbe. This goes back to a conversation we had before about when I was in the system. One day, I realized that the system wasn't necessarily going to teach me everything I needed to know for life. I realized, I think it was when I was going to be sent as a Talmud Shliach, and I was going to Eretz Yisrael, and I was asking myself, well, if I'm the Rebbe Shliach going to Eretz Yisrael, do I know, am I well versed in the Rebbe Shlichus on Shleimus Haaretz and Mi Yehudi, and what today everyone knows listening to the Gems videos of Eretz Yisrael and things like that. And I realized that, don't wait to, if I'm going to walk out of this system saying, oh, my teachers did or didn't teach me something that I should have known, I'm going to make it my business. So I went to the source. Who's the master teacher? Mereinu v'Rabbeinu, our Rebbe. And the Rebbe taught me everything. All of the wisdom, obviously, that my teachers maybe helped me understand, but to know anything about life. And that's when I made it my business to make myself an educate of the Rebbe, to make myself into the Rebbe's Talmud, that the Rebbe should have made an imprint in the way I think and the way I look at things, based on the Maimer Chazal, Kol HaMelamedus Ben Chaveirei Torah Ki'ilu Yelodei, that, as the Rebbe said to the Talmidim in Tafshin Yud Beis on Erev Yom Kippur, when he called them in for the first time, the students of 770, to give them what became known as the Birchas Abonim, he said, "Ihr lernt doch in the Rebbe's yeshiva, seid ihr doch dem Rebbe's Kinder." Because you learn in the Rebbe's yeshiva, that makes you the Rebbe's children. So, what does it mean, a ruchnistic, a child of the Rebbe, when you think the same way, when you're a brainchild of the Rebbe? And the Rebbe's Torah has contributed to form and shape your worldview and the way you understand and look at things. So in other words, that really motivated me to want to be thirsty, to want to know and learn the Rebbe's Torah. Now, within the Rebbe's Torah Gufa, there is the edited, printed version, that's Lakot Sichos and etc. And there's the Mugadik and Maamarim, and that's formal learning. I guess this is an Neshama thing, because of my soul, my spirit. I gravitated a lot towards the Rebbe's Farbrengens. The Rebbe's Farbrengens were not just a class, it was an experience. It was an experience that swept you away into on the one hand, a very intellectual, informative, contentful world of Seichel and of Torah. But at the same time, in Yiddish you say the bruis, the vibe, the shturim, the energy of the Rebbe as a Manig Yisrael. Why did he sit there, teach us Torah for hours? It was about bringing the Eibishter down into the world, to share with us the Elokus B'Pshitis, for us to taste, to dip in a drop into this unlimited world of the Rebbe's wisdom and clarity on how to look at everything in creation and the world. I felt like that was, and the Rebbe did it also, the Nigunim. The Nigunim and the Rebbe's Farbrengens, it's not recess. It's when you zekocht zechiber. It cooks inside you the messages that were shared. The wide scope, Arashi, a Rambam, a Maimer, a Mi Yehudi, a Shleimus Haaretz, the Kviyas of the Shabbos. It really brings you into a higher world view of perspective on the world. And then it's always, the Rebbe would, whenever you walk into a Farbrengen, I walk in like on an empty tank. I'm empty, I'm thirsty. I want to be filled. I want to be enlightened. I want to be inspired. When you get to the end of the Farbrengen, the Rebbe himself made it this way, that the end of the Farbrengen was always a climax. At the end of the Farbrengen, in the old day, by the big Farbrengens, he would sing Tzomel Nafshi, or usually at the end of the Farbrengen, the Sheibana Beis HaMikdash, or the Nyet Yekavo, of when everyone's minds and hearts were open. And by then, the Rebbe, stirred you up, and with that, you walked away. And when you walked out, whenever you walk away from the Rebbe's of Farbrengen, you walk out looking milamayla lamata on the world. You look at the world and it's all small, it's all down there, and you have clarity, you have ambition, you have a goal. And I felt like this was a lot of this, besides for, just that informal school teaching, we learn text and we learn context. The Rebbe's Farbrengens, although the Lahak put out Toiris Menachem, which is true in a sense that every word the Rebbe ever said is Torah, but there was a lot more than just Torah. Right. As if to say, per se, as Torah meaning a Rashi or a Rambam, that came out by the Farbrengens. You were uplifted. There was clarity. What's a Yid? Who am I? What's the world? What's another Yid? And purpose and so forth. And I felt like this was in this system. Today, I feel very strongly that this is lacking. I mean, Bechlal, of course, after Gimel Tammuz, and it's lacking. And to be able to give over, and that class, although the administration of the seminary is not so pleased that there's no curriculum to it, but the Rebbe had no curriculum to his Farbrengens. It was addressing in Yonim and Torah and timely events, and I give, I'll listen to a Farbrengen, and the Rebbe's Farbrengens, in the Yuds 6, 7, 8 hours, and in the Lameds, and the Mems, the big Farbrengens were 4 or 5 hours, and then you have the smaller Farbrengens and the Shabbos Farbrengens, and the structure of the Shabbos. And to give this over, I see b'muchash that there's something very, very special in the receivance of these classes. That's when they go away saying, "Wow, I got a taste, I got a feel of it," because I do it in a very live way, in the Anochi Mitzavcha Hayoim, what we said before, in that way. So, to go back to your question. In general, the things that I'm teaching are practically relevant. Now, if you want to take me to a conversation, to the Shtiklach and Chassidus, are you learning Seder Shtalshlas? Are you learning Basi L'Gani, Eden Safla, Mailad and Kates? Are you learning Samach Vov and Ayin Beis?
Well, so, let me just interrupt for a second.
Yeah, this is going to open another conversation.
Right, and I think that's important because as I finished asking the question before, I was thinking to myself, I should have clarified that this shouldn't just be about how you teach it should be how a person could learn it, because this is the struggle of Balabatim. This is the struggle, you come in Shabbos morning, you open up a Torah or whatever, even if you have more of a kviyas, and like, how do you relate to it? How do you relate to it, but how do you make sure that you're going to relate to it? So I think that's perfect. Yeah, more about how you learn for yourself. Say what we were going to say before. Forget the part that I threw about the balabatim.
A person has a brain. The most valuable used to farbrengen. The kop nish verlieren. The most valuable thing we have is our Chabad shebenefesh. I heard from Balei Tshuva that they said, they came to the Rebbe, the hippies and the Lameds. They said what was striking about the Rebbe's Farbrengen was not just the Tzomel Chanafshi and the soul-stirring songs, but there was meat, there was bread, there was content, there was substantial, solid understanding and learning. We're people. Although we have busy lives and we have to make money and we have distractions and we have kids and families, but we have brains. And primarily, and that's on a human level, on a Torah level, Tanya, Perek Dalet, Perek Hey, Yichud Nifla She'ein Yichud Kamoyu. The greatest unity with the Eibishter is when your brain understands and absorbs Chachmasa Yisbarach, the Torah. when you learn Chassidus, now obviously my premise, my background is that I was in yeshiva, I learned Chassidus. I was in Oholei, and I learned 2/3 of Samach. Well, fine, that's nice, I was in 770, learned 50 prakim in Ayin Beis. Obviously, what used to excite me was, let me just finish this and then I'll say what used to excite me. Learning itself, for human beings that are cognitive beings, we are people that operate not by instinct but with brains. Learning is something that's supposed to talk to us. Content is supposed to be something that talks to us naturally, and therefore, I'm not talking about, a bacher, I'm not talking about the distraction, schlemazeling, wasting your time in yeshiva. If we're talking about someone, self-respect, you want to learn, you know, if you know something, you're worth something. If you know something, you're a mensch, right? Learning Chassidus. Chassidus is vast. Chassidus is so reich. And I want to speak a little bit about the what the part of Chassidus that I really enjoy and learning and discovering on a personal level, and that is the Seder Shtalshlus of the Matan Torah of Chassidus of the Rebbe. We all know the Alter Rebbe invented the seed concepts and ideas of Chassidus. Alter Rebbe made up Chassidus Chabad. Of course, on the first page of Tanya he said Melukat mipi Svarim mipi Seifrim in a way of humility, but the Alter Rebbe made it up. Everything's in Tanya and Lekutei Torah. The Mitteler Rebbe, von a Wort gemacht a Quart, the famous saying, from a page in Lekutei Torah, there's a 20-page, 50-page, Al Totzer Asmayev that the Mitteler Rebbe said to Rebbe Kiva Eger, 100 pages in print, Mamorei Admarim Tzoi. The Tzemach Tzedek, the vastness of Torah. Now, I'm not a Greisa Talmud Chochem, but a bissel here and there, I can't get through the ions of the Tzemach Tzedek, of the references. But there are Maamarim that are there are. And if you need the Oznayim LaTorah, which means you need the how to get there. And I'll soon tell more about that. We know that the Rebbe on Maamarim of the Tzemach Tzedek, had the Koilel Jungelite and the Bachram 770 make a Sefer Lekutim, which was also that we should have accessibility and there should be user-friendliness, which we'll speak about soon, within Chassidus. But the Marash Hemsheichim, of course, when we start talking about the Rebbe Rashab, the Rambam of Chassidus, the systematic clarity, you put Chassidus in a box, square, you can learn, it makes, you learn Samach Vov. He took every concept in Chassidus that is randomly thrown around, and it's just in order. There's a narrative, it's consecutive, it's one. I remember the excitement I used to have after one Maimer Samach Vov in the middle of the Chreis, Hamshech HaChedesh, what's coming next? Where's he going with this? Where's it continue? What's the rest of the story? The thoroughness of understanding of a scholar in Seder Shtalshlus, often discussing a concept the way it's in Atzilus and the way it is in Elam is higher than Atzilus, Ak and Kav, and then in Lifnei Atzimtzum. And the structure in so many inyonim. Learning is so, the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Hafshota, I'm not talking about the Aveda de Maamarim, but, went through, certain Hemsheichim of the Frierdiker, Hemshech Rashon Tzadik Daled, the most edler, the most, delicate, nuanced, gribbling in a vort from, that was the, a Yesod, from his father's Chassidus, and then taking it into Hafshota, it's phenomenal when you learn it. And of course, now where I usually start, and let's get back to Hiskashrus, is I usually started from the Rebbe's Maamarim. In other words, what happens is a lot that as a youngster you open up the Rebbe's Maamarim and it seems unclear, it seems not spelled out. Sometimes the Frierdiker Rebbe's Aveda de Kamaimra sounds much more juicy to read, especially you had Maamarim in the Mems. The Rebbe Shabbos would say a Nakuda from Teres Chaim. When within learning, and I did this extensively in certain tkufas of my life, of when I was learning the Rebbe's Maamarim and then going back, going back to what it's meyusad on, and it's pashut fascinating. If I'll give briefly on that, the Rebbe's Maamarim, the Rebbe throughout the Rebbe's 40 years, 38 years, the Rebbe stopped saying Maamarim in the last few years. The Rebbe went through all the Rebbeim. The first 15 years, more or less what I'm saying now, this is not accurate, but more or less, the Rebbe said every big farbrengen started with a Sikha, the Friedrich Rebbe, but besides that, we're talking about Maamarim. The Rebbe was saying a lot of Ayin Beis and Ayin Ches, Ayin Tes, the Rebbe Rashab. Now don't forget, Ayin Beis wasn't printed. Right. Nobody knew what the Rebbe was saying. Rabbi Simpson, Olav Shalom, and Rabbi Jacobson, Olav Shalom, was Rabbi Shmuel Levittin. They were jumping up and down when the Rebbe said, they remembered it from the Ayins in Lubavitch. It was like, but there wasn't if they had Anocha, they didn't have Anocha. The Rebbe had an Ayin Beis. I had an uncle, great uncle, which contributed to a lot of my knowledge and interest and excitement in learning Chassidus. His name was Rabbi Follie Dubov. He was Mareches Eitzer Chassidim, which means if you open the Oholei Torah, the back half of the book is Maamarim.
Right.
And Rabbi Chitrik Shalom was commissioned by the Rebbe to do that. He started with index cards. There was no computers in those days. And he worked in the Rebbe's library. And as I bocher, I hung out with him a lot. And he took me to the Rebbe's library. He showed me Bichlach of Chassidus, Kuf Ksaviet Kedesh. What does it mean, a Beigen of the Tzemach Tzedek and these things. And I saw them real life. And he gave me a lot of background, the printing, Bichovsky, all the, a lot of history about Chassidus and its development. I remember I told him I'm a big bacher in Oholei Torah Zal learning Samach Vav by Nachman Shapira, and he's like, but that's gelernt the Vayakal Agodel, like you know the Mittel Rebbe's Maimer that it's based on, like you read that. Yeah, I'm learning Hachedesh Vayelech about what's Eid and Sof. You learned Lahavinin and Eid and Sof Tavkuf Samach Beis. Like he gave me that he directed me to understand the Seder Ishtalshlus of the delivery of Chassidus. What I do want to highlight is just one thing. There's lots and lots of examples for where I saw. I'll give two examples of where I saw the Rebbe koching in the previous Rebbeim's Chassidus and how it became a koch by the Rebbe. One thing is the Ateres, Tafresh Ayin Tes I mentioned before. It's a fascinating year, which means like this, briefly. Most of the years of the Rebbe Rashab sent him Sheikhim, which means the first three Rebbeim of Chabad, the Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, spoke on Parsha. Right? And that's why Chassidus is scattered and it's all over the place. Where's a topic? Where's this? Where's the Oholei Torah B'chukei? Where's the Oholei Torah Bracha? It says it all over the place. The Rebbe Rashab started to make, the Rebbe Marash started to Hemshech, but the Rebbe Rashab, in other words, the Hemshechim. Now, most of the years of the Rebbe Rashab are Hemshechim. The big ones, you have Rosh Hashanah, you have the known ones, what they learn in the system, Ranat, and you have Rosh Hashanah, Samachala, Samachdala, Samachei. The big one is Samachvov that goes through Samaches. Then you have Eter, and then you have Ayin Beis all the way through. The last 2 years, I'm not talking about Tafresh Pei, which is a different thing, but the 2 years, Ayin Ches and Ayin Teres, in Rostov, the Rebbe Rashab said Chassidus on the Parsha. Not like the Hemshechim. And it's very, very mature. I don't know how to say this, and if I could say this respectfully, properly. It is, you had to know the Hemshechim in order to know. He references briefly in those last few years. It's almost like in our language, the Nun Aleph Nun Beis of the Rebbe. What was one of the most frequent statements of the Rebbe in Nun Aleph Nun Beis? Ki meduber kama pamim. Which means that what I'm saying now, as a bullet point, which that's how the Rebbe spoke in the later years, is based on, and you had to know, and was elaborated and was in an unpacked way in the years before. And it's very similar like that in the Rebbe Rashab. And the year of Ateres is Pashat almost every week, a mimer of the Chassidus Parsha. That means taking a lot from, Torah and Teres Chaim, and saying it in a Rebbe Rashab way of clarity. And the Rebbe said so many Maamarim in the early years, and also later in the Mems, also on Ateres. And it was just fascinating for me. And there was 2 or 3 years when I was a while ago, when I was learning through Sometimes if I started from the Rebbe's Maimer and found the Rebbe's Shabbos Maimer, I started from the Rebbe's Shabbos Maimer, whichever way it was. But learning a Maimer the way the Rebbe Marash writes it, the way the Rebbe Rashab writes it, the way the Frierdiker Rebbe writes it, and the way the Rebbe said it over and a few times and in different places was very, very revealing and rewarding for me to be able to see the nuances of the different Rebbeim, the crux of the theme that the Rebbe brought out. That's one moshel. One more thing, I know I'm going on a bit. One more thing, and this is just something very valuable, is the Maimer that the Rebbe Rashab said by the Rebbe's Bar Mitzvah. The Rebbe was Bar Mitzvah, Yud Aleph Nisan Tov Reish Ayin Hey. The Rebbe was not in Lubavitch.
Right.
Okay, there was in Yekaterinoslav. And the Rebbe's Bar Mitzvah was on a Friday, Yud Aleph Nisan Tov Reish Ayin Hey. That Shabbos HaGodel, Tov Reish Ayin Hey, and the Rebbe Rashab said a Maimer. There's a Maimer Tzavasar, and then there's a Maimer Matzazu, and then Shvi Shel Pesach, the Maimer of Yonim V'Cheshech.
Is this part of the Hemshech?
It's in Ayin Hey. It's in
So-
Ayin Beis.
Yeah.
But it starts a whole new theme. And what's the theme? Mashiach.
Wow.
And what's it about Mashiach? The whole idea that Lifnei HaTzimtzum was Elokus B'Pshitis, and after the Tzimtzum became Elomus B'Pshitis. And when Mashiach's going to come, the world's going to become a place where godliness is revealed. And the $1 million question is, how? If Monavshach, God created the world as a place of darkness, so what happens that the world could become a place where godliness can be revealed? How does that work? And the answer is Aveda. It's fascinating. The Rebbe said over this Maimer, the Vayi'onon, 35 years later, Tavshin Tesvov is, 40 years later, and Tavshin Chav Hey, 50 years later, Anachan Shel Pesach. And it's in Lekut Sichos in various places. And it's printed in Melukot, V'nacha Chav Hey, which is merged with V'nacha Tavshin Tes. But this idea of saying that the Rebbe kocht sich in those Maamarim and Ayin Beis. I remember my great uncle told me, Chitrik, that he saw once the Rebbe's Ayin Beis. The Rebbe's Ayin Beis, this before Lamed Zayin when it was printed, which is a whole story for itself. The Rebbe got from the Rebbe in the 1930s. We know that the Rebbe was, slowly getting into the Frierdiker Rebbe stuff, and the Rebbe took the Ayin Beis, the Guf Kesav Kadesh of the Rebbe Rashab, and the Rebbe took it to, this is in the mid-1930s, to a photocopy machine, which is not like today you have a photocopy machine. It was probably a massive thing that was like pictures. And the Rebbe had pictures made himself, pictures of the whole Ayin Beis. And I heard from my great uncle that saw that the Rebbe's Ayin Beis was crumpled. He probably saw it in the Rebbe's room, probably after a long time, I'm assuming, but it was crumpled up, like it was used, it was learned, it was...
Wow. Okay, so all this, I mean, this is fascinating for itself. I'm sure you give these classes to your students, this history, whatever. Yeah, fine. I'm saying
just
this
answering the question. What gets me going and learning Chassidus? I mean,
right. So that's
this is Chassidus. This is the lem. This is life. This is our minds. This is our learning Chassidus is Keim Chayenu.
Right. So in other words, that's besides for the absolute geschmack. Yeah.
I just thought of one more nakuda, and I know I'm going a bit extensive, but I just thought of this nakuda, and this is a nakuda that I personally gets me going. It gets me very excited, and that is the concept of, which in today's generation we don't have much of, the concept of Nesinas HaTorah, the delivery of a Maimer Chassidus Kenesinosa Misinai. Today, how do we learn Chassidus? We're listening to a podcast. We're listening to a class of a rabbi who was giving a delivery. The way Chassidus was given to the world for over 200 years was that a Rebbe said Chassidus. And when a Rebbe said Chassidus, it was like Reb Hillel Paracher said the famous words. After the Maimer, he argued Pshat with the Tzemach Tzedek. He argued the Tzemach Tzedek answer. He said, the Rebbe said this story over a number of times. When a Rebbe is saying a Maimer, it's Shchina mit der Beres Mitech Krene. It's the Eibishter talking from his throat. He is now a vehicle to the delivery and the giving and the revelation of Torah. I find in my personal life that something that really, really, really talks to me, to my neshama, is listening to a mimer being said by the Rebbe. I don't know how to make this popular. In other words, I'm not saying this necessarily how people could do this. I don't know, how out there this could be. But I just want to share this. We know that the Rebbe became Rebbe Yud Shvat. Tavshin Yud Aleph, the officiality of it was, Nemtsov jumped on the table and said, the raid is good, but we need a mimer. And the Rebbe started, Basi L'Gani. That's the Rebbe. Now, obviously, Rabbi Yael always used to say that the Maamarim, the Rebbe guarded and kept the language and the scripts of Rabbi Seinu Nesienu before him. In the Sichas, the Rebbe expressed himself more in a certain way. And that's truth to that. At the same time, the crown jewel that was transmitted, the Divrei Elokim Chaim, the delivery of a Maimer Chassidus, is something that we lack a bit today. If you read, what did our ancestors, what did Chassidim do in the times of the Tzemach Tzedek? Our Shadar would come, the Mittel Rebbe Institute, every Chassid that came home from Lubavitch, chazed a Maimer. And when he chazed a Maimer, everyone stood there and they sat there and listened, because now he's saying the words that were given at Har Sinai, they were given by the Rebbe. Chassidim came to the Rebbe, there's Yechidus, there's writing to the Rebbe, there's B'Megala Nigel Avova, there's sharing with the Rebbe struggles, then the direction of Avodas Hashem, then there is the Rebbe saying Chassidus. And I could talk a lot about this, but I just want to say in a practical way, I find myself that what really steers me up is listening to a mimer, or watching, whether it's on a video, and preferably if I know, the mimer that it's based on, noch besser, but listening to a mimer of the Rebbe. As he says it. Now later on you need to understand, and by the way, that's what happened by the Farbrengen also. Did everyone understand everything? In others, you could have maybe missed the word, you could have not had clarity of what you could have missed it. But when the Rebbe says Chassidus, and when he's saying the words, Yardan Neshama Lamato, and the Rebbe saying it with his language, that really touches my neshama, and I really feel it. There are times when I intentionally listen to a mimer. Again, I wasn't makabel this from anyone, but just an example of this. Every Yud Shvat, I listen to the 40-minute recording of Basi Legani Tavshin Yud Aleph. Every year, again and again. Every Yud Aleph Nissen, I listen to the B'yem Ashtayasar Yom. Just listen to the tape and just listen to the Rebbe say the mimer. And it's more than just I learned it or I'm fluent in it. It's engraved. It penetrates in me. When I hear the Rebbe cry, or if I listen to a Maamar Yutus Kislev, or the intro to any Basi L'Gani, every Yud Shvat the Rebbe,
right.
The first 5 minutes of the Maamar is all
catching up.
The review,
right.
Just listening, just saying over the words. It's more than just study knowledge. This is the Rebbe pumping elikus into our neshama, for lack of better words. And a chassid has to have that state of Kabbalah. There's a fantastic letter in Atomim, a letter the Frierdiker Rebbe printed in Atomim, about the 2 stages of learning Chassidus. The first stage is Kabbalah, receiving the words of the Rebbe, memorizing them, drilling them into your head. Then starts learning.
Wow.
In other words, like this, what we're doing a lot today is the learning part. But the standing at Har Sinai, do we have that? Do we have that aspect in our lives as Chassidim? When you stand with a gartel and you concentrate and you listen. If you speak to the Chayzrim, Simon Jacobs, they'll tell you there was a whole art of absorbing,
right.
Before transcribing and before studying was receiving. And I do that with myself sometimes, and it's very impactful.
So
Okay.
This letter of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the L'chayra, the word is Davke Chassidus. In other words,
absolutely,
right? Yeah.
In other words, Frierdiker Rebbe
because Chassidus has
describes
that
1 time, 2 times, 3 times. You chazer it over, and you're medayik in every nuance, every kof, every knech, It's about klita.
right.
Klita means absorbing. Then, and the Frierdiker Rebbe is saying, and that's not the mitzvah of studying Chassidus. The mitzvah of Da'alat Selakei Avicha starts after that.
Right.
Once you know the mimer, then starts your brain working to understand and make sense of, critic, challenge, prove, ask, compare. The whole idea of Bina comes after the Nakuda of Chachma. The Chachma comes from above. You hear the mimer. Then stops Bina, I start trying to understand with my own brain. And when my own brain figures it out, then I fulfilled the mitzvah of knowing Hashem.
Right.
Right? Which, just like putting on tefillin, writes the Frierdiker Rebbe, your physical muscle has to feel the weight of the weight and the tightness of the strap of the tefillin. The brain has to comprehend the concept of Elikus in order to fulfill the mitzvah of Das Elokei Avicha. And that only happens after the Kabbalah and the Klita of when Chassidim hear a mimer.
Right. No, but I think it's what I'm asking is about the Davke Chassidus, is because you could say like, oh, the same thing as when you're learning Nigla. Like first you have to just hear the words of the Gemara, and then you start understanding it. And obviously, obviously there's truth to that. But I think it sounds like what you're saying is that this is, and you're saying that the Frierdiker Rebbe writes this specifically about Chassidus in this letter.
Yeah.
It sounds like based on what you're saying about, because Chassidus is inherently the Divrei Elokim Chayim. It's the Nesinos and Messinai. Therefore, there needs to be a much stronger emphasis on that part versus just as a regular seder of learning anything, where you first have to just give yourself over to the Isis.
Divrei Harav.
Right. In other words, there's Chachma as Chassidus talks a lot about this. There's Chachma as the first step of Seichel, and then there's Chachma as the bittul to Keser. The bittul to Shalamayla. By Chassidus, so even when you learn Gemara, there's that Chachma element, of course. But with Chassidus, that you're saying that's much more of an ikr because of what Chassidus is. Okay, so to circle back for a second, not to wrap it up, but to circle back for a second. So again, I asked you about the relevance of Chassidus, like when you learn deeper in Chassidus, and you explained that, like, let's focus on when you learn for yourself. And so besides the fascinating history and the formula, if you would say, of you describing how you learn. It sounds like the direct answer. I want to just focus on this for clarity. This sounds like the direct answer for you, and I think I appreciate what you said before. That you're not trying to proselytize this onto everyone, and how this is shaykh for everyone. But for you, it's just the learning itself. It's just the learning the Divrei Harav itself that is the most relevant, because that is the life. That is the.
I said 2 things, right? Before I was speaking about the learning Chassidus as an engagement of intellect, and then I spoke about this idea of the speciality of receiving Chassidus from the Rebbe.
Right, but both of those are answers to how you feel its relevance. You feel its relevance on a seichel dika level, right? We're human, like you said, we're human beings. We understand for a living, and then the life that listening to the Maimer brings out. And fakir dafke, not dafke, but for sure, even when it's something that not only is a tifa Indian, but sometimes, like you said, something that's very hard to even understand what the Rebbe is saying when you're just listening to the words of the Maimer. You have to learn it after. That's it's a very geschmack, and I of course there's a lot of it's a big topic nowadays about the relevance of Chassidus for everyone, and how Chassidus has all the answers, this cliche that that's passed around, and there always needs to be this Indian of appreciating the gift that we have in a like Chachma and the bittul to L'mayla. I wanted to You mentioned Yud Shvat. Basi L'Gani is one of those examples of our safe Kates, and we are before Yud Shvat. And what's geschmack about Yud Shvat is, a tip for podcasting is that you don't. They say not to put yourself in a certain time, right? You don't say like, oh, let's talk about this concept because it's relevant right now. Because if someone wants to listen to this a later time, what's geschmack about Yud Shvat is that Yud Shvat's always relevant. Because it's Der Shvi. Right. So any time of the year that you're in Der Shvi. And Yud Shvat and Basi Legani is the cornerstone of that. And especially now that we are right before Yud Shvat, let's spend a little bit of time on that. How everything we spoke of, I see a lot of connections already of the life of the Rebbe in the Maamarim and the Hiskashrus that you get just from listening to the Rebbe's Oisius, and like you said before, that was officially the beginning of the Rebbe's Nasias, officially when the Rebbe started Basi Legani. So how do we connect to all that? In other words, I was thinking about this myself a few days ago, that in a way, Dafka, because Basi Legani is so enormous and is so important, I feel for myself sometimes that I get lost in that enormity. Like it's like it needs to be relevant. So what's the relevance? In other words, like, because it's so enormous, where do you even start? Like, where do you even begin? I mean Basi L'Gani as a mimer, and I mean Basi L'Gani as the oisius of the marching orders of Der Shvi. And of course, we know it's it's dir b'tachtonim, and it's Hiskashrus b'tachtonim haisa, and it's Shvi l'rishon, and it's all these things from Yud Aleph, and then of course from all the years. And maybe because I heard it so many times, it's almost like, right, so what really is it all about? Like how do you translate that into day-to-day relevance and importance? And not that it's not relevant, Chas v'shalom, it's so relevant, but like maybe I could use some clarity of focusing on what is the Rebbe trying to do here in Basi L'Gani, and therefore how do we live Yud Shvat? How do we prepare for Yud Shvat, and then how do we experience Yud Shvat? And of course, to experience it means that we prepare for it. So I'll hit you on that.
So, of course, when we speak about Basi L'Gani, there's a lot of, like you said, very, very general central themes. Of course, every year has its unique, Pedic and the Maamarim of that year. But I think there are, like you said, there's a few very, 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 very key points that really can are supposed to drive you as a person, as a Lubavitcher Chassid every day. When we say the things, we say the word Deira Shvi l'rishon. The different sentiments of the way the Rebbe said it, the Lei b'bchirasai, but we inherit it, we got to get the job done. To bring the geula, to bring Elikus into the world. The al tikra vayikra ela vayakri.
Right.
We're not like Avram, bezuchnish Mesiras Nefesh. We're not like Rabbi Akiva, which is looking for Mesiras Nefesh. We're Avram. We want the world to know Kei Leilam, and we're going to do whatever it takes. The idea of Shtus Kedusha. The whole approach of Shlichus Mivtzoyim, Shtus Kedusha, L'mayla Matam V'das. I mean, these are so central in our... What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a certain inyan in the Hemshech Ha'ilula, in the Basi L'Ganis, and I think I'm going to develop it with this, because this is really a Hemshech to what we were saying before. From Perek Yud Aleph in the Hemshech, he brings the moshel of Bizbuz Ho'otzros. The moshel of Bizbuz Ho'otzros, as we all know, there's a king, and the king has treasures, and the treasures go back all the way generations. And not just these treasures are not used, that no one gets to see them even. And then when it comes a war, so if he's fighting a war just for because then he makes a calculation, how much should I invest, how much am I going to gain? But when there's an enemy that wants to annihilate and get rid of the king realizes that it's either we're going to win or I'm going to lose. And what it takes to win is, if I need to, then the king splurges, he's mevazvez the eitzrus. And he takes all the Eitzres, Sha'otzra, Avesav, and he gives them out, and therefore the generals to give to the Pekidei HaChayil, to give the Anshe HaChayil to win the Milchama. And I think this is a very central theme. It's also a fascinating thing to know. There are two dates that we mark the Rebbe becoming Rebbe almost. It's Yud Shvat and Yud Dalet Kislev, the Rebbe's Chasana, which he said, the Tagvas of Hamudim Mir Mit Eich. And it's fascinating to note that the moshel of Bizbuz Ho'otzros, which comes from Teres Chaim B'Shalach, the Mittler Rebbe's Maamarim and B'Shalach, was said by the Frierdiker Rebbe, by the Rebbe's in the Maamar Abba Rabbi Yeshe Yud Kislev Peites and the Rebbe's Sheva Brachas, and for Yud Shvat, which means on both of those occasions, the message was Bizbuz Ho'otzros. The Rebbe's wedding and Yud Shvat. Bizbuz Ho'otzros. Now, if we speak about this, there's a sikha that's not so well known. It was Purim Tavshin Chaf Gimel, a long sikha. I don't remember now how long, an hour-long sikha. I don't remember now. A long, 40 minutes, whatever it was. And the Rebbe spoke about, it was actually not such a Purim vibe. It wasn't such a happy mood. The Rebbe was speaking about lost opportunities. And it was a long arichas. One of the strong points that the Rebbe was speaking about is that we have today the printing and the ability to publish and disseminate. This is going back to 1963. I mean, today we're 100 steps ahead. And that we're not using every opportunity. We're not utilizing it. We know what a shturim the Rebbe made. Tanya on the radio, these little things. Disseminating Chassidus. And the end of the Sikha, the Rebbe said the words, Koil, Doidi, Doifik, and Pischili. Those words from Shir HaShirim, and the Rebbe began to cry. At the end of the Sikha, Reishi, Nimle, Tol, Kvutsoisei, Resisei, Loilo. The Rebbe said that the Eibeshter clapped Bamtir and Betzach, he's knocking on our doors and he's begging us, seize the moment, use the opportunities, do what you can, do everything. Here we're in a new world, post-Holocaust. Spread Yiddishkeit, spread Chassidus, and we're all sufficing with, a good schluff on the couch. And the idea that the Rebbe was mevazvez the Eitzres, just let's speak in simple terms, until the Rebbe came to America, what of Chassidus was available in print? You had a Tanya and a Tereir L'Kutei Torah printed by the Tzemach Tzedek. You had a Derech Mitzecha printed by one of the Kappas the Chassidim, and you had a few Sfarim of the Mittler Rebbe, Sharayeda, and Rebbeina Derech Chaim, whatever it was. How did Chassidim learn Chassidus back in Russia? They learned from Ksovim. They learned from Shmuel Schreiber's Ksav. From the photocopy machine in Lubavitch was called Shmuel Sefer, and he scribbled Maamarim, and you paid a few kopkis and you got a copy. And this is how Chassidim learned Chassidus. The Rebbe came to America. The Frierdiker Rebbe appointed him in charge of Kohos. And the Rebbe started printing Chassidus. The Rebbe had no money in the early years. Okay? The Rebbe started off with the Hemsheichim of the Rebbe Marash, Vehechrem, Lamed Aleph, The Rebbe writes in the Pesach Dover that he's looking for the means of how to get this done. But the Rebbe had a big idea. Through the years, the Rebbe pumped out what today, when you walk into Kosh on 8 Tavis, and you got a shelf of the Alter Rebbe, and a shelf of the Mittler Rebbe, and 2 shelves of the Tzemach Tzedek, because the Rebbe made the Sefer look good, a shelf of the Rebbe Marash, a shelf of the Rebbe Rashab, a shelf of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and many shelves of the... This didn't exist 70 years ago. The Rebbe had teams of people working on Maamarim Mekaymis. Today's on Zizangazun, Gavril Shapiro and Zissel Pekarsky and Eli Matzav, the Chaver that are working in the Rebbe's library and all this. To make Chassidus at some point, first of all, the concept of making Chassidus an Oishis Murabois. It used to be the old bubble jet Rashi Asius that you got a headache from reading, Derech Chaim for too long. You can't read a paragraph because you couldn't read it. And the Rebbe said it's got to be Oishis Murabois. The whole concept of Maamarim Mekaymis. The sales in Kahos, which cost the Rebbe a deficit. The Rebbe would tease by farbrengen once, Rabbi Chadakov, he's going to have an issue with this, but we're making a sale in Kahos and you're going to be able to buy the kuntras and buy the Maimer and learn it and live it. The Rebbe made the Bizbuz Ho'otzros. Everyone knows, the moshel of the Alter Rebbe to Upshrayan, the Kitrug of Pinchas Koritzer, of the son of the king that was sick, and the doctor said that if you take the crown jewel and you grind it up, you mix it with water and you pour it on his closed lips, maybe a drop will go in and revive him. The Rebbe poured on us, showered on us. The Rebbe poured on us bli gvul Chassidus. There was in the Maimer Basi L'Gani Tofshin Lamed, not the Motzei Shabbos, the Farbrengen, but Shabbos on the afternoon when the Rebbe was 20 years, a milestone. The Rebbe finished the Sefer Torah of Mashiach that Friday. That Maimer, towards the end of the Maimer, the Rebbe said, Megist to Megist. He made with his hand, the Rebbe's hand by the Maimer. Megist to Megist. We're pouring koiches, resources, opportunities, and material for us to get the job done. And like in the Moshel of the Bizbuz Ho'otzros, where it says that the Pekidei are the generals, but it's supposed to be given to the Anshei Chayil. And Anshei Chayil is all of us. Little people, foot soldiers, but we're the ones getting job done on the ground. And here's the thing. The Bizbuz Ho'otzros that we have today, I spoke about, that was what the Rebbe did, Bizbuz Ho'otzros. And what it's gone to the next stage, to the next level, what we have today. Chassidus, the user-friendliness of Chassidus today, the approachableness of Chassidus, the availability of Chassidus today. There's so many classes, Hebrew, yet in every language, for different levels of people. There's material, the Chassidus Maveris. I just talk about, Sichas in English, what they're doing, revolutionizing right now. Pumping it out there for the masses. The world, this is Mola Oretz Deya, in a time when Leirav Lelechem Leitzom Lemayim, where the world is, anyone who's searching for something, sick and tired of the shallow pustkeit of social media and of the Nanishkeit of today, and the Dvar Hashem, which is just spilling out there. And it's our task to keep it going. And that's exactly what I do for a living. To make the Mola Oretz Deya Hashem. So this is, in other words, this is the Bizbuz Ho'otzros. The fact that today we have the videos, the tapes of the Rebbe, the Sichas Kedesh, the Teres Menachem, the Igris, the English letters, the Likutei Sichas, the abundance, the flood, and of course the flip side is that Amalek Tzaitin, a Kuntras came out, you sat and learned it. Today, I sit on the couch with my feet up on Hey Tavis and go online and order a click of a button. It comes for a couple $100. Comes a shipment to your house, bookshelves of Svarim, and it's like a nice decoration. You open the sefer, Nemarein ain't drop. Take a drop and it should go in, and if it goes in, it will revive and it will give life. And today we have to recognize and celebrate the Bizbuz Ho'otzros that we have, that we know that the Bashgacha Pratis, with all the Hiskashrus HaChoshech and the challenges that are unprecedented that we have today, we also are to know and to realize that they're there for us to use, that we have the resource, we have the material, and we need to use it. We need a drink. Famous mashal was, they used to say, Farbrengen, was once a little birdie, tweet, Eibishter, I'm thirsty. Said Eibishter brings a gust of wind and blows it to the riverbank. The birdie turns down, Hashem, I'm thirsty. Eibishter said, that much I can't do. I blew you to the river. Now all you need to do is bend down and drink. But that's what we need to do. And we'll drink, it will quench our thirst and revive us.
L'chaim. But okay, so you touched on Bizbuz Ho'otzros, and it's true, and we need to think about that and appreciate what we have. But we could talk about, of course, Basi Legani, Yod Shvat. You want to prepare for Yod Shvat and you want to connect, and of course, this is absolutely one way to connect. Learning the Rebbe's Torah and Fakert, learning the Rebbe's Torah in a way that you brought out throughout this entire conversation of really living the Rebbe's Torah, not just learning the Rebbe's Torah. You mentioned before about Teres Menachem, right? That the word Torah, right? Like I'm thinking, like maybe you would have named it Chaye Menachem or something, like Oilei Menachem or something. But
there's truth to it. Every word of the Rebbe.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, not Torah. The Torah Melashon Hara. Torah is not just Seichel, right? Of course. But the point is that, of course, this is one way, and maybe you could even say the way of Hiskashrus, right? The Yemim of Chavdal Tzivan of that the Hiskashrus is by Limud Torah. But specifically, not specifically, but the Rebbe, there was also a mission statement. There was also like Der Shvi, of Iker Shchem B'Tachtonim Haisa, of Shtus T'Kedusha, of his Hapcha. Hafatza Samayanis, not just of your learning it, which, and we know that Hafatza Samayanis begins by yourself. There is the Hafatza within yourself, of course. But the Rebbe's, it would be hard to say that the Rebbe's mission statement was just to learn Chassidus. So how would you connect this concept of learning Chassidus and learning Chassidus in a way that it overfloods yourself with, again, I think that if the person would go into your Shvat with a achana, with a achlata, and with a mindset of like, let's start taking the Rebbe's Torah seriously in a way of learning it and living it, and dayenu, and but is there a step further? Is there a way that this relates also to the entirety of a person's life, to the entirety of the world, which the Rebbe had that vision? The Rebbe was going to bring Mashiach to the whole world, not just to teach more Chassidus and to teach Chassidus in a way that's more available. So coming to your Shvat and trying to tap in to what the Rebbe wants with their Shvi, because that's really what it was about. Of course, it started by seeing a Maimer, but the Maimer was about what our mission was. How does that relate? How does that? How do you take this Reichkeit of Chassidus and translate it into the rest of your life, the rest of your day, the rest of the world, the rest of your, meaning, of course, it's Afatza, the act of Afatza, but the rest of your viewpoint of the world, which ties back to Be'etzem, what we're trying to do here, the relevance of learning Chassidus. And again, not to say Chas v'shalom that learning Chassidus itself is not relevant. I think we discussed that. But how does that go even a step further to how Chassidus impacts you? You're not learning Chassidus 24 hours. Maybe you are. But most of us are not learning Chassidus 24 hours a day and maybe not even 2 hours a day. Okay, so what's that next step of taking whatever time you have and whatever energy you have to learn Chassidus and impacting it with the rest of your day, with the rest of your life?
Okay, let me ask you a question. If I were to ask you a question, what are the most two frequent directives of the Rebbe in the entire set of Igros Kodesh? What would you say?
Oh, like instructions?
Instructions.
Oh, okay. Chitas.
Chitas.
Yeah, and how about Hafatz Smayonis?
Learning Chassidus.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, learning Chassidus, exactly.
Okay, so let's start from there. In other words, what I want to say is I'm going to talk about, as you described, and I'm going to base my answer first how it impacts me, and then from me to my surrounding life and the world around me.
Correct.
So let's start from me, and let's talk now much more practical than we've been talking before. We said, learning Chassidus, learning Chitas. There has to be a staple, a staple bare minimum, by every single Lubavitcher Chassid, the concept of, like we say, learning Chassidus, learning Chitas, which means it's just like a Yid, obligated to learn Torah. Without Torah, mitzvah, a little bit of Perkei Shachris, Perkei Chadaris. Al derech zeh. What I found, with oneself, is that one has to make, I'll call it like a Rebbe moment in your day. Or, the moment, when you plug in. Okay, now this can be in various cases, there's the Geshevel and there's the Balesik, but really for everyone and anyone, everyone is able to and must have, that breath of fresh air. I find, for example, for myself, and I'll just share a few, basic things. Not when I'm listening to a long farbrengen, but on a regular day, and I'm busy and this, that, and the other. Before I'll go to sleep at night, I've got the Rebbe Responser app on my phone. And I'll randomly open up an English letter, the Rebbe, about any topic or any person in life, and read it, and fall asleep with it. It's a moment of plugging in, right? The best thing you'll do with $5 is subscribe to Gem and watch the Living Torah. It's a message. Now, obviously, we live in a world where we see things and we move on fast. But the Rebbe this is truth. And it can, to have those moments, to have that time when you recharge. I don't know how to, in practical ways. I'll throw out what I do. I don't think this is a role that I've been, but I listen to Chazorah. When I say Chazorah, I mean Rabbi Yoel Khan would Motzai Shabbos would say over the Rebbe's Farbrengen, and the Manichin, David Feldman in Hebrew and Simon Jacobson in Yiddish would write down the Rebbe's Farbrengen. And then on Sunday, after a Shabbos Dike Farbrengen, throughout all the Mems, we have tapes from Mem Aleph until Mem Ches. We have 10 years of tapes of WLCC, Chaim Baruch Halberstam, and Akne, and Shalom Berebe. They had, Rabbi would sit upstairs and they would get him a coffee and he would sit there and he would say into the mic, which went on the phone to all of Chabad Center, went on tape, whoever wanted to listen in or buy the tape of the content of what the Rebbe had spoken on Shabbos. Sunday afternoon, he would say it. And I listen to Chazorah very often on a Friday afternoon, setting the table, doing the dishes, cleaning up for Shabbos. I'll listen to Chazorah. Now, for the crowd that I'm talking to, I don't believe this is so practical, but you should know, and this is something that I would highly want to advocate, and that is, there's a Yid in Crown Heights, sein gesund und stark, these are the four Shleim, called Zev Katz, the God of 770, and we have 10 years of tapes of him saying Chazorah, Mitzvah Shabbos, the crowd of Balchuvas in Crown Heights that was sitting, attending by the Farbrengen and didn't understand fully the content of what's going on. They were there for the vibe, the spirit, the Nigunim, saying L'chaim to the Rebbe, there's no question. But there was always a crowd, Mitzvah Shabbos, that would come, and a shul, I think it was on President's Connected, I'm thinking over there, I'm not sure, but he would go to a shul in Crown Heights, and Mitzvah Shabbos, we have tapes, it's about an hour long, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour long, of where he would rattle out the content, the highlights, the key themes, the message, the intro sichas, the Nyani Tigema, sometimes give over what was their mimers, if it was too difficult, not. But then he would give over the question and the answer on the Rashi, the question and the answer on the Zohar, the pre-Yud, whatever it was, and give over the sentiments if they're bekochtzich in something, and gave over basic content of Farbrengen. He starts off... It was
released, I think, recently.
A few years ago.
Yeah,
Zaydim put it out,
yeah.
And it is a treasure. He starts off like this. The Rebbe began the Farbrengen this afternoon, and he starts to say that this Shabbos is, and he speaks in a clear, slow, very, articulate English. And it is a treasure. I personally, have a hard time learning from klisheni and klishlishi, people. I'm not saying any, there's treasures out there, Project Lukutsichas, Magidish Yurim, and many Magidish Yurim, and many people are doing a great job and doing a very good job explaining and clarifying. I always wanted to hear the klirishin, the pot on the fire, either the Rebbe or the video or the tape, or if you can't, because Shabbos, I find even that the Chazoras are more beneficial for me than even the Hanochas. That means I'd rather listen to Rabbi Yoel than read the Hebrew transcript from Teres Menachem, from David Feldman, because it's just more alive. Often you get expressions, not always. There's always omitting. He'll miss a word here, he'll miss a word in the Anocha, he'll change around an order in the Anocha. I just like to hear the sometimes I scribble down notes whilst I'm listening. If I'm doing the housework of Erev Shabbos or Motzai Shabbos, then I'm not writing notes, but I'm listening. And I just get the Farbrengen. And I'm just, what were we talking about? I'm just keep going on this. In other words, that's moments when let's just talk about learning a kvias for a second. This year I'm following Tufshin Membeis. I always learn. I've been all the years, there were years I took an achlata to learn, on a Simchas Torah, I take achlata. This year I'm going to listen, I'm going to chaz. And I went through years of the Rebbe, Maamarim and Sicha, the Lamens and Mem, different times, different years. Tkufas of when I've been heavily immersed in the Rebbe's teachings, and it's contemporary for me. Now, it's not mamish the same, obviously, and we're there, it's hard for me, Taf Shalom Adala, the Yom Kippur War, and it's hard to, relate to it. But there's always, first of all, you get the energy, and you can translate it into the contemporary life. And then there is the Pashat the Teda. Now I'm listening to Membeis. Just yesterday, I listened to the Yechidus of the Rebbe to Pinchas Menachem Alter, the Ger Shiva, whatever, and the conversation of the Rebbe with him. It's just a 40-minute Yechidus. the Rebbe's, telling him to fundraise in America. He was telling the Rebbe, Mashiach, the Rebbe told him to fundraise in America. So he said, I'm uncomfortable. I'm not a fundraiser. The Rebbe told him, you think you're doing it for your Mosdos? You do it for the American Gvirim, the Schwere Gehalten. The Frierdiker Rebbe held that you have to be Mezaka, the American Gvirim, with giving tzedakah. The Rebbe said, I'm biased because I'm koching a Bias Mashiach. I want Mashiach to come. And V'shaveh b'tzedakah. Tzedakah is going to make Mashiach come. So he said to the Rebbe something like that, Mashiach doesn't come on a Friday. I guess it was a Thursday night because Balabastas are busy preparing for Shabbos. So the Rebbe said, but Yiddish Balabastas are going to forgive Mashiach. Let him just come. They're busy making the kugel. The Rebbe said, it's just I'm living, since last year, I'm doing Mamalef, Membeis. The koch and I mean, this just recently, any time I go to, I'm in Trader Joe's and I meet a Jew and it's day, night, I can't do tefillin, whatever, I don't have, whatever the case is. I signed up a guy for Eisbesefetera. Why? Because that's what I'm listening to.
Wow.
In the Sichos. I'm not talking about the Rashi and the Zayar and the Maimer and the koch of Yitzis Kislev Chanukah, whatever, which is so much life. Learn and live with a kvias. And again, you could do this. This is not 2 hours a day. This is once a week before Shabbos or Motzei Shabbos. What do you do Motzei Shabbos? Everyone runs to the phones to check the news. I checked the news in 770. It's 40 years ago. Teiras Nitzchi. I don't care that it was 40 years ago. For me, the Rebbe's talking right now.
Right.
And I'm listening. Go back to what I said before, the Kabbalah.
Right.
I'm listening. I'm absorbing. So, let me go back to your question. That was a lot, and I highly suggest this. It's chazorainenglish.org. I don't know if it's on YouTube, Spotify.
Yeah, you can find us.
You can find it on Zevkats.
Right.
Chazoring, you have 10 years, from Mem Aleph until Mem Ches. All the Mems, just pick a year, a Shabbos they can farbrengen, press play, and you just Mitzvah Shabbos in the Farbrengen. It's just so
right.
And it's
they're not that long either.
They're
usually
40
like
minutes,
an hour,
50 minutes,
under an hour.
And it's clear, understandable English. But let's go back. That was all what it pours into me. But then there is how it shines off me and reflects from me and spills into the world around me. And like you said before, with Deira Shvi, at the end of the day, Yafutza Menesecha is to Chutza. Now, within Lubavitch and within the Lubavitch community, we like saying that the chutzah is our own brains and our own nefesh habamis, and there's truth to that. But the end of the day is we are the earnest aticha lagoyim. We are the ambassador of the Rebbe and of the Eibishter and of Chassidus in this world. People point fingers at us, especially when we talk about current events and shluchim and where that goes. And people know Lubavitch and people know. And wherever you go and whatever you're doing, you are a walking, the Zarei B'chaim, the walking and talking Lubavitcher. Right? That, like I said before, if you go shopping or if you go, let's talk about first our immediate families. When we spill this out by our Shabbos table or to our kids, this year's, the 50 years from the Shnas HaChinuch, and the Rebbe made the Torah Psukim, and there's a lot of talk about, that us as Lubavitchers, instead of shopping around for other methods in chinuch, to really go back to basics, to our core formula, what the Rebbe gave us, and it's so powerful. It really is powerful. The Torah Psukim's messages in our children's psyche and in their lives, and bringing it up. As a chassid, if this is who you are, then if this is what I'm absorbing, this is what's going to spill out of me. Right. And if I'm with my kids, or if I'm in Trader Joe's, or if I do go somewhere exotic and I'm on the plane and I don't have that, the lack of pride and hiding under my blanket and being a chicken for being frum and being a Lubavitcher chassid, but to walk around with stolz, with pride, with my head held up high. I'm not perfect, and we all have what to improve, but we have this gift. We have the wisdom for the world. We have and you could tell this to any goy lahavdil and to any Jew that you meet. It's it's a mission. We're on a mission. We live our lives as shluchim in whatever our Pel Mamishtik Shlichus is.
Right. So you're saying it starts from the learning the messages and learning and absorbing the Rebbe's viewpoint, and then automatically, and I think what you said is important. This is Basi L'Gani is about makif, but like it is a little bit makif. Well, what you're saying, like the general living with the Rebbe's perspective, but then you mentioned about that there's concrete steps, concrete plugins that
make
are
Rebbe moments.
Right, Rebbe moments. And I think what I don't know if you spelled out what you want to say about chitas, about from Igris, like the Rebbe's two directives of chitas learning Chassidus. There's like the Rebbe moments that are simple and straightforward, and you can't fool around. You can't convince yourself otherwise. Chitas, Rambam, etc. And then you're saying there's also the kviyasin and maybe a little bit extra kilu, but it's not extra because it's a staple. Like you said, it's a time that needs to be set of plugging into the Rebbe's vision, plugging into the Rebbe's mission. I think this goes back to what. And then that spills out forward and into your own life and to the way you interact with the world. I think this goes back to what you were saying before about the Oznaim L'Torah, about how would a person be able to. How would a person know how to do this? How would a person know how to, so let's say you have a guy and he wants to take on learning a kviyas, learning a certain, making a kviyas in his life, in his day, a few minutes of learning, but not stop learning for the sake of learning, but also learning for the sake of absorbing the Rebbe's message and absorbing the Rebbe's vision. What are some great go-tos for that? Like you mentioned about like Rebbe response and like opening a random letter, and yeah, of course that could be one way. What would be some other practical? If the audience wanted some practical, everyone has to have their own Mashpia. Everyone has to Mashpia. That's number one. It has to be said. But in general, what are some go-tos that could apply that could help a person learn in a set way and live with those messages?
The pasuk says, "Teiv ayin hu yevorach ki nosan milach moi ladal." About Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu was given the Torah by the Eibishter, and he was noyek teiv ayin, and he gave his bread to the pauper. Right. The Rebbe said this to the Bochrim, the last Berachas Abonim. That I find Hiskashrus is very interestingly personal. One person is going to relate with Igris. One person is going to relate by going to the oil regularly. One person is going to relate with Project Likutei Sichos. One person is going to relate, the gem clips. One person is going to have a chavrusa. A chavrusa is going to work for them. Once a week they learn the Pashta Sikha and Likutei Sichos, back to basic, you learn Likutei Sichos Chelek Aleph and it gives you something substantial. I think it's nosan milach ladal. Everyone has their own bread, and I can only share my bread, my Hiskashrus with. I can tell you tracks and but really, I think I shared what works for me. Right. And if anyone could take from this and apply it, modify it, and for themselves, but it has to be your way. You connect your way. The way that inspires you, the way that brings you clarity. If one guy's reading Teres Menachem in Hebrew, the other guy needs Sichos in English. One guy likes audio, one guy likes video. One guy needs Rabbi Yossi Jacobson, another guy needs a different teacher. It's personal. It's what works for you, I think, is the answer. But it has to be staple. Right. I think that's the answer.
Beautiful. Okay. Shkoyach, thank you for taking the time. L'chaim, and we should go into this Shvat and like we said before, it's for the whole year. We should go into our day-to-day living as der Shvi with the Rebbe's messages and the Rebbe's life and the Rebbe's energy, and be able to absorb it ourselves and pass it on.
Yes, l'chaim. Ultimately, we're doing this all because with the emunah and the tzipiyah, the cry ad Mosai, and the strong anticipation and hope for a day of when Molo Oretz Deya, when the whole world will know this, and we're making that happen.
Amen.
Chaim.
Amen. Chaim.